Okay, hello. We are live. It is Friday afternoon, and I'm just hanging out, getting some work done. Is this working? Okay, good. It's working. I'm always scared that it's never working. And of course, my dog is barking, and my phone is going, and everything's happening right now. Anyway, hope you guys are all having a great Friday so far. I'm just gonna wait for some friends to pop on. I'm really hoping that my kids aren't too loud downstairs. I forgot that today is a PA day, so my older son is home from school. If you're here, just say hey and welcome. Just gonna wait a couple minutes, make sure this is all working. Okay. But yeah, so today we are going to be talking about our, what's it called? Watercolor week. And how it went. There we go. Hi guys. Yeah, so I just want to talk about Watercolor week. I had posted on Facebook and Instagram just asking if you guys had any questions or something you specifically struggled with Watercolor Week, something you'd like me to clarify a bit further, then I can do that during this live. So there we go. People are coming on. I always get nervous before people start saying hey. I'm like, am I talking to myself? Is it working? So I get nervous. Hi guys, to you in Michigan, Belgium, France, London, Ontario, Texas, LA, Portugal, Naples, Florida, Kansas. Wow. Hi, guys. Northern California, Virginia. Hi, guys. Okay, so I have my little notes here of all the questions that I wrote down that people had somewhere. Where is it? It's here. And you guys can feel free to ask any other questions that maybe you didn't see the post and you didn't get to ask. So this is specifically what you were struggling with as a beginner with watercolor. If there's things that you were struggling with our exercises that we did for Watercolor Week, I can try and clarify it again and do a couple demonstrations. So I will do that. And yeah, I'm going to try and make sure, like if I'm looking down here, that's because the chat's right there. So I'm trying to look at what you guys are reading. Your living room. Hi, Matt. Look after the kids, honey. My husband's downstairs with the cat. The kids, you know. I'm really tired. The kids were up at 5:30 this morning, so, you know. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in to some of our first questions. I will do some demonstrations, but I'm also going to chat a bit. Okay, hold on. Let me just organize this. Okie dokie, because I have my camera on over there. Let's do the picture in picture here so you can see this face and my notebooks. Okay, because I will try. I have my Canson notebook here, my watercolor sketchbook, which I mentioned to you guys. It's not the greatest quality, but I know it's very familiar to a lot of beginners, so I like to use this just so I can explain things if this is what you're using. But I also have my Etchlab sketchbook here, so I can show you what it looks like on cotton paper, because cotton paper is the best, even though it is expensive. Trust me, I get it. And remember, I'm all for using whatever supplies you can afford. I started out with dollar store supplies, so use whatever you can afford, use whatever you have, and that is that. Do tube color supposed to crack when they're placed in the palette, or is that a cheap tube? Okay, so I would say that that would probably be cheap tube watercolors. With inexpensive tube watercolors, I definitely suggest using them wet, which is harder because we tend to use more of the tube than we would if they were dried, especially as beginners. I find a lot of people come from like using acrylics in the past, so they'll use watercolor tubes like that wet paint like an acrylic, and that's what I did the first time before I was taught properly. So I don't suggest it, but if you're using inexpensive ones like Artist Loft, I think has inexpensive tube watercolors, Reeves, those ones, I don't know if I necessarily put them in the palette and let them dry because they might crack and fall out. Okay. Hope that answered your question. Okay. So the first question is, paint drying too fast. I'm going to try and be on camera, but then for demonstrations. Okay. Paint drying too fast. So I have this issue too. There's a couple factors that come into play when your paint is drying too fast. One is the climate in your room that you're painting in. If you live in a hot climate, so like Florida or somewhere tropics, it tends to dry a little bit faster. So in that case, you do need to work faster. If you're doing like wet on wet, or, you know, like a full landscape where you wet down the whole paper and you're trying to go back in and add color, you might just need to work on working a bit faster. But also different papers will dry faster than others. So a good cotton paper, like I really love my Arches paper. I find it soaks in the water and holds it the water a lot better than other ones do, so it stays wet longer. My Etcher Lab is pretty good at that too. One cotton paper that I just tried recently, the Stonehenge Legion paper, aqua cold pressed, I found that dried really fast, even though it was 100% cotton. Canson dries really fast, so there's just a couple things. You're just gonna have to work faster. I definitely suggest mixing your colors beforehand so you don't, you know, lay down your water or your first layer and then have to go and mix your color and then put it on. You're just kind of wasting time in that sense. I would have it all mixed so you can do your wet layer and then bring your new color right in and start painting. So that's kind of my tips for working when it's drying too fast. I just want to make sure I'm not missing any questions. My Winsor, I'm guessing Cotman. Tube paint cracks. It's always a Prussian blue. Yeah, some colors do as well. I find my burnt umber, even in my Winsor Newton professional line, it's a lot thicker and it always ends up in like a ball and it always falls out of my palette. I used to just keep sticking it back in with water and then someone, I forget where it was, I want to give them credit. Ooh, now the sun comes out. Someone mentioned that they just took another color, like another brown that sticks well in their palette, and puts it underneath their burnt umber and sticks it in that way. So I did that with my sepia in my palette. I just put a little bit of sepia in the little well and then stuck my thing back in there. I don't know if you guys can see it. This one always falls out. So I just took a little bit of that color, laid it down, and then stuck my burnt umber back in. And so far it has stayed. Am I able to show a painting I have done to get your tips on blending? Yes. I will also mention that we have a Facebook group for Watercolor Week and it is in the description currently. So click on that, request to be a part of it. And lots of people are showing their work there and I can give you tips if you have any questions. And then also what's great about the Facebook group is that other people will also give you tips if they know too. So it's kind of like a great community that we've put together there. When you start painting, how much water do you put on your palette to make your paint? As to what consistency? Okay, I'm going to go over that for a demonstration. Bee paper at Walmart works good for me. Bee paper is great. They don't have it in Canada. They used to have it at Michael's. It was like $10. Sorry, now the sun's out. Now the sun's out. They used to have it. That's too dark. They used to have it in Canada at Michael's and I would always use the 50% off coupon and get it. And then they were discontinued and I don't know, but you can find it in the States and that's another good cotton paper. Emma, I still haven't received my subscription box from Craftimo. They were just mailed out last week. People are just starting to get them this week. Is there a place you list the paints on your palette? They're all, I believe, in the description of almost all my videos. And if you want a palette tour, I believe I have a video on that. Just look up on YouTube, Emma Lefebvre palette. And then all my videos that have anything to do with my palette are in there. When you start out painting, how much water do you put on your palette? Oh, someone else says the same thing. Okay, I'll do a couple demonstrations of wetting up my palette because I think that was a lot of people's issues, and also with the mixing to get like secondary colors and tertiary colors, they found the more they mix them together, the more watered down they get, and they'd lose their vibrancy. So let's go here. So here's my palette. Everything is dry in my palette. Okay. And I do believe I have another video on this where I kind of go over loading your brush. I think I linked it in one of the videos. Okay. So I have a little spray bottle, which is somewhere on my desk, of water. Okay. So I have this little spray bottle here. And I will just spray my paints, or before I even had a spray bottle, I'll just take my water from my jar on my paintbrush and I'll just put drops in there. You want a little puddle, but you don't want just a little puddle. You have to activate it by swishing it around. Like, you can't just go one swipe and then paint. It's going to be very light. You need to activate the paint. You need to move that water around, have like a little puddle in there, but you really have to move the paint around, get it saturated on your brush like that. Okay. And then when you're moving it over to a mixing well to mix like another color. So let's grab yellow and blue. Okay. So I'm going to wet up my yellow. Okay. I can't just leave the water on that and then start painting. Okay. You want to mix it. So I'm going to mix my yellow. I'll show you how much more vibrant that is. See the difference? You really got to mix it in there. And then I'm going to keep going, grab a bunch of that, put it on my palette. Maybe I'll even put a bit more water on there. You got to really mix it up. Like that. Wash off your brush. And then let's say I go to my blue. Okay, I really got to mix it. That's what's going to bring up all that color. Put it over here. And then you can mix, and your secondary color or your tertiary color should be nice and vibrant. Now, the tertiary colors, like I was saying, was when people are mixing, say, a primary color and a secondary color. So they're doing maybe a blue-green. I think what trouble they're running into is that their mix on their mixing well wasn't saturated enough with color. They didn't bring enough color over. So you really got to mix it in your palette. You can't just wet it or even have a dry brush. You have to have everything nice and wet and really mix it in there before you bring it over. Okay. Now, some paints may not be as great quality. Some may take a little bit longer to activate. I really like Winsor Newton Cotman. That's what I started out with, but it does take a little bit more swishing in your palette to get it activated. Okay, so the professional ones definitely activate a lot easier. So just spend more time with your wet brush, get a little puddle in there and really mix it up to bring it over. So then when you go to mix like your tertiary colors, so your primary color, blue and green, you're going to have, I need a bit more. You're going to have enough paint there for it to be nice and dark. Okay. So that is that. I really need someone like reading my comments for me or my questions. Let me just see. When you start painting, how much water do you put on your palette to make your paint as to what consistency? Okay, so if I want it really nice and dark and saturated, I will bring lots of paint over. Like I said, like I was swishing it around a lot to make it nice and dark. It's not going to be the same every time because there's going to be times where I want to work with a light wash. So say I want to do a light wash of this color. Okay, so it's nice and dark and saturated. We just put it there. We know that. Now I want to do a lighter wash. Now you can add a bit of water to this to make it lighter, but what I tend to do, so I'll wash off my brush thoroughly, and so it's clean and it's just damp, and then I'll just pick a little bit of it up, and I have a lighter value of it. Okay, and if I want a bit more, I'll pick a little bit more up, make it slightly darker. Okay, but you have to have no paint on your brush beforehand. And so it changes. So when you're working with different values, like our value lesson, I think that was day 2, it's going to be different. It's not always the same, but if you want a really nice dark saturated color, you really got to mix it up in your palette. Okay. Hello, Emma. What do you think about the cadmium-free colors? I bought Winsor Newton Professional palette, and it came with cadmium-free instead of cadmium. I actually haven't tried the cadmium-free colors. No. Hold on. Hold on. Do I know where that thing is? Yes, I do. Okay, so I have this Winsor Newton Professional Watercolor chart. I could just show it right here. So, because I just wanted to test all the colors, see if there was anything new. It's a dot card. Oh, where it has all the colors. Does it have cadmium-free yellow? Okay, so here's cadmium yellow. Here's cadmium-free yellow. I can't tell a difference, so I don't know. I know cadmium is toxic, so cadmium-free is probably better for you. I just have cadmium colors. I was gifted, so I used to use Cotman watercolors, the Winsor Newton Cotman watercolors, and then a viewer gifted me a ton of her ones that she just wasn't using anymore. She decided to switch to a different brand, and she gave me like a ton of her old Winsor Newton tubes, the professionals, and I was like, oh, great. So then I've just started building off of that, and the yellows that I had were cadmium colors. So I think I had cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, cadmium red. And so, yeah, I've never tried the cadmium free because I didn't really have to. And then I even switched. I don't really use cadmium red anymore. I use Winsor red. I like cadmium yellow pale, but maybe I'll try the cadmium free yellow pale. I don't know. But yeah, that's the color chart. Those are fun to get. I think this was like $15 on Amazon. But I found some colors that I would really love, like my perylene green, perylene violet. I love brown madder. There's just a bunch of fun colors on here. So yeah, I don't know about the cadmium-free colors. Will your Craftimo brushes eventually be available for those who can't afford your monthly boxes? Yes, they will. It's going to be limited. We have so many plans in the works with Craftimo. Our boxes just started coming out. It's going really well. I'm so happy. People are loving them. And I understand it's quite pricey. Like I said, I started out with dollar store products. Like I did not have money to do that. So I understand that. But we will be selling the brushes, I believe, some of the brushes individually, because we had to order a certain amount to get the boxes. So we sold a certain amount of the boxes. Then we're going to have all these leftover brushes that we're going to start selling individually, and I will make an announcement. I'll do like a community post. I might do a video. I'll put it on my Instagram. So if you're not following me on Instagram, you should go there and do that so you get all the updates. And even my Facebook page, because I'll announce it there too. So yes, you will get them. And we have other things in the works, like maybe a whole new brush set. So yeah, exciting stuff. Okay. Sorry, I'll stop. I do my exercise on Canson paper when I feel confident and try it on my Arches paper. Yes, I definitely suggest you do that. I like these Canson sketchbooks because it's great for practicing. And if I'm doing like a demonstration or like a reel, I will probably use this paper. My son did that. I did not do that. But if I'm just like playing around with like a new color or something or a new brush, I'll just play in this sketchbook, right? This is my play sketchbook. Sorry. My subscription box is at the door, but I just got COVID and I can't go get it. Oh no! I'm trying to get my daughter to understand the urgency to go get it for me. Oh no. First of all, feel better. I had COVID over Christmas. That was fun. That sucks, but hopefully you get it. How can one paint in extreme heat waves without everything drying out so fast? Struggling with the heat. Yeah, so I kind of addressed that at the beginning. You're going to have to learn how to work a little bit faster, or you could just do paintings that require a lot more working in layers. So I find when I'm doing my loose like landscapes and florals and stuff like that, I tend to do a lot of wet on wet, so I need it to stay wet longer. But if you end up doing more detailed work, I find it's okay if it dries faster because you can go slower and you're doing a lot more layers. So maybe try doing a bit more detailed work where you're just working a lot of wet on dry instead of wet on wet, because you only really don't want things to dry too fast if you're working wet and wet, right? So maybe just change up your your painting style a bit. Just try something different. I have learned so much from you over the past year painting your favorite flowers, mine too. Will you be willing to do an A to Z Emma version of flowers that start with A? Ooh, that's a cool idea. I'm gonna write that down in my little book here. A to Z flowers. You know what? I feel like I've neglected flowers a little bit. There was a comment on my Patreon from someone that said, ugh, all she does is flowers. I'm unsubscribing. This is boring. It's like, but you guys know that I love flowers. And then I got really insecure about that. I'm like, they don't like my flowers. But I'm like, you know what? I need to start doing things that make me happy. So I'm going to be doing more flowers because that is what got me started. And that's what makes me happy. So I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. Emma, this may be a dumb question. No dumb questions. But let's see what you have to say. But what brushes did you start out with before you had your own? I bought so many of the Princeton brushes and the Winsor Newton, but I'm not loving them. Which Princeton brushes? Jade, I'm guessing. It says Jade. It looks like I'm gonna go. Okay. Did you use these Princeton brushes? Because these are the ones I used before I did my set. These are some of the most inexpensive brushes from Princeton, except for, I think, the Princeton Select ones, which I tend to use for like gouache or acrylic or something like that. But these are what I used for the longest time. I love these Princeton Snap brushes. Size 12 and size 6 are my favorite. Definitely recommend these. Highly recommend these. That's what I started out with. And before that, I started out with, not a joke, dollar store brushes that look like this. Swear to God. These were my brushes before I had any brushes. So there was that. Okay. Do you also answer the questions from your comments of your video announcements, or do you only answer the live questions? I wrote such a long question. Oh no. So this is the thing with YouTube. I'm on so many platforms. Okay, I have Instagram and Patreon and YouTube. And the thing is that I put out about 2 to 3 videos a week. I've been doing 3 videos consistently for 5 years now. 3? I don't know. 5 years or something like that. So when I'm putting out that many videos, it isn't like people are still commenting on videos of mine from years ago. And I just don't have the actual time in my days to go through all the comments. So if you see a video from 2 years ago and you comment, I'm not going to see it. I hate to say that. I'm not going to see it. What I do is that when I upload a new video, I go through the comments that whole day of the new video and I will answer all your questions. And maybe even the next day too, I'll look at that video. But then after that, it's so hard for me to keep up just because of the amount of videos that I put out. And a lot of my time I am creating new videos for you guys. So I don't have that. And then the rest of the time I'm with my kids and I can't just sit on my phone and answer questions. But where I do answer questions, the best place to reach me, is Instagram. I know not everyone has Instagram, but if you want to chat, just get Instagram. You don't have to upload anything. You don't have to look at anything. But if you want to use it as like a messenger to me, that is where I look at most. Email's not great. I don't really look at my email, at least for art stuff. Just like my business email, I want to keep for business stuff so I don't miss anything. Facebook, I try and see all the comments on there on my regular page, but I don't always see questions. I will if you message me on Facebook, but Instagram, I always see it. So if you want to have a conversation, send me photos, send me a video of something you're struggling with. I will definitely answer your question there. I answer everybody's questions there. So get an Instagram. You don't have to use it except if you want to message me. Okay. But that's the best place to reach me and I can't change it. That's just with everything on my plate. That's just the easiest for me. Okay. Can you compare your Winsor Newton you use to Daniel Smith tubes? I have done a video. I think I had like 6 Daniel Smith tubes and I don't know. I'm not as much of like a pigment nerd. I couldn't tell the difference. Both are great. I know people who swear by Daniel Smith, and they're amazing, and I'm all for it. I can't really tell the difference. I think they're pretty much very similar quality, both professional quality. The only reason why I use Winsor Newton is because I was gifted so many free tubes from a viewer, and I just built off that collection. I didn't want to build a whole new collection of a new brand, so that's why. Okay. Okay. When I do the pedal stroke, light pressure to heavy pressure and all that stuff, I do the same shape of the pedal on the right side that I do on the second. I do on the right side, so the second light pressure is always wonky. Has someone else had that? I don't know. It's so hard. Some of these things, this is also why I like Instagram, because you can actually take a video with your phone and show me what you're doing and then send it to me, and I can actually just see, oh, that's why this is happening, or that's why that's happening, or photos, or whatever. So if you want like me to see what you're doing, definitely send me a message. I would love to look and help you. Are your subscription boxes, will they be available in Germany? They ship worldwide. So they were. They are currently sold out now, but we may reopen the subscription in a few months. So you won't get January's, but you'll get maybe starting in May or so. I watched a tutorial that wets the front and back. Then they lay the paper on a non-absorbent surface. It keeps the paper wet longer. Yes, I've heard of that. I've just never tried that. That seems like a lot of work for me. But yes, that could be a good idea if you... But how do they keep it down? I mean, I guess it just lays down. I don't know. I'm ordering your new book today. Yay. Thank you. Okay, I gotta get to the questions that are in my book here too. Emma, is watercolor your job? Or do you have another one? Nope, this is my job. I was a stay-at-home mom when I had my first son, and before that I was a teacher. I taught kindergarten, and then I decided when I had my son I was going to be a stay-at-home mom because my paycheck would maybe barely have broken even with the cost that daycare would have cost. So I decided to stay home. My husband was working, and then motherhood rocked my world, and I needed something for myself, and I started painting and making videos. And it took off, and now this is my full-time job, part-time job, because my husband and I both work from home. We have our own businesses, and so we take turns. So I work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and he works Tuesday, Thursday, and we take care of the kids that way. Okay. Okay. Do you sell brushes and supplies? Through Craftamo. I design them, they make them, I test them out, they make them. But yes, craftamo.com. Okay, I'm going to get to some of the questions that I had here, just because other people asked before. Okay. Color matching was a thing I will go through. Someone asked, what are quick things you can paint when you don't have the drive or energy? Okay, so I like swatching colors, or you could pick up my book and pick any of the easy tutorials from there. Those are quick. Sometimes just like working on small, tiny pieces of paper is really helpful. So you know that you're not overwhelmed by this big, elaborate piece. You can just do like tiny little landscapes or even a card. Just play around. And like just do a flower or something. Those are always really good things to do. Okay, where to add shadows and highlights in paintings. Okay, so when you're painting something, say a landscape or even a flower, if you want to give it that like extra oomph where it looks a little bit more realistic, you need to think of a light source, okay? So it doesn't have to be a real light source, like that's reflecting on your paper, but just pick an area. So if you have, hold on. This way. I forgot what I was doing. This way. Okay. So say if I'm painting a flower. Okay, just say I have a flower here. This is an awful flower. Okay. you want to think of your light source, okay? So that, like, it can be here, could be here, could be here, could be here. Wherever it is located is where you have to kind of think of this imaginary line where it's going to shine down, right? So anywhere that it would shine, you're going to make lighter. So say it would touch here. You know that flowers kind of have that inside where the petals all kind of curve in together. So the light is not necessarily going to touch this side, right? It's not going to touch the inner part here. So I usually tend to make it a little bit darker towards the center. And then maybe like on the sides or something. It's hard to explain like in a quick manner, but you want to think of a light source. So I think we did this before, or I have a video. Think of a ball. Okay. Pick, the flower was a bad example. Pick your light source, okay? Say it's coming from this way. You're going to have this imaginary line. So you need the highlight where it hits. So I'm just going to lift up some of that color there. And then the shadow. So I'm going to take a bit of darker pigment, maybe a little bit of green, because that helps create a shadow color. And I'm just going to put it at the opposite end, underneath, because it's a 3D object, right? And that just helps it make it look a little bit more realistic. I mean, not this, but this does not look realistic at all, because I'm doing it super fast, but you know what I mean? That's, you kind of have, you pick the light source and then work off of that. This paper is not good for this. Okay. So if it's hitting that way, you're going to put a highlight there, put a shadow there. That makes sense. I do have a video or two on light and shadow, so definitely check that out. If you're ever looking for any of my videos, just type in YouTube, Emma Lefebvre, light and shadow, Emma Lefebvre, trees, Emma Lefebvre, paper, like any of that kind of stuff with keywords, and my videos should pop up. Water control. Water control is a really big issue for a lot of people. I even still have trouble with it at times. You make mistakes, you drop water places that you don't mean to. It's all good. My tips for water control, my biggest tip, okay, first consider your brush size. If you're using a size 12 brush like this, you know it's going to hold a lot of water because it's bigger. If you are using a brush that is a size 6, it's obviously smaller, it's going to hold less water. So that's your first consideration. The second consideration is, what are you painting? Are you painting a large flower, or are you painting a tiny flower? So if you are painting, say, a tiny flower, but you have a big brush, you want to make sure you don't have a ton of water on your brush, because you are painting a small object. You don't want the water to take over. So my brush is wet, but it's not dripping water, okay? What I like to do is, so I'll have my brush wet, I'll run it against the side of my jar, always. And if I'm doing a small detail where I don't want the water to take over, I will always just tap it on my paper towel just to take off that excess water. I have my wet paint in here. Then I can go in and I can do my little flower without it being super wet. Because if I didn't do, let's say I didn't dry it on my paper towel, I just ran it against the jar. This is a lot more wet. And then I pick it up here. There's such big puddles here, okay? Such big puddles. So maybe also, if you're not as familiar with that, if you're doing something smaller, use a smaller brush. If you're doing something bigger, use a bigger brush. You really got to play around with water control because it's something you have to get a feel for. You can't, like what I'm demonstrating here and what you're doing at home, you might have a different brush. You might have a different, atmosphere. Is it hotter in your room? Is it colder? So I can't really see. You kind of have to feel it for yourself. But the good news is that it's never unfixable. So if you have too much water, just take your paper towel, mop it up, and then try it again with less water, right? If you had too much water, just dry it on your paper towel, pick up a little bit more color, and try again. Okay. One thing I was seeing that people were struggling with was when they were blending, say on cheaper paper. So let's say we have pink here and they were going like this, right? And then they wanted to do the gradient from dark to light. They went back in to wash off their brush, like I said. I don't think they ran it against the side, or maybe they did, but there's still a ton of water on their brush, and they went back in. So they just added a ton more water there than was already on the paper. So now you're going to have this big wet mark when it dries, because there's more water here that you just added than there was on the paper. Always wash off your brush and just run it against your paper towel, okay? And then add it. But also, if you're adding that later, drag it down. You want to evenly distribute the water, okay? This I can already tell is a little bit more dry than this. So if you have to, go back in with that darker color, wet it up again, drag it down, okay? We want to get rid of that color. Washing off my brush, run it against the side, dry it, and then blend it. Now, another thing that I saw people were struggling with was the blending, especially with cheaper paper. If you use heavier pressure like this, you're gonna lift up the color. You don't want to lift up the color. So when you're blending, especially with smooth paper like Canson, you have to give the lightest amount of pressure and you're just slightly dragging it. Okay? Don't press hard. That lifts it up, especially on Canson. Canson is awful for that. It's a little bit easier on cotton paper, but even still, anytime you're blending anything, the lightest amount of pressure, because when you press hard, you're actually lifting color. You don't want to do that unless you're trying to lift color like we did when we tried the bokeh effect, right? We wanted to lift the color, so you kind of have to scrub with a wet brush. Hope that made sense. Do you have a pencil that you use for sketching before? I do. I have this pencil, which is nothing special. It's a Tombow pencil, but I also have like a mechanical pencil somewhere else. I don't have any special pencils, and this one needs to be sharpened really bad. Yeah, nothing special. The one thing I do suggest is getting a kneaded eraser. They don't leave residue on your paintings or your paper, or those little flakes. These are amazing. Definitely get one. I think they're listed in my description, the Faber-Castell ones. Are those watercolor paints at the dollar store good for learning with, or is it best to get a better brand for learning with? Okay, so I actually just finished, before I came live, I just finished filming a tutorial, trying out dollar store watercolor supplies. And you'll see in the video, the palette I found at the dollar store, this one I found a while ago, is this. It's garbage, guys. It's garbage. It's garbage. Don't get this. But if this is what you can afford right now, and you're like, do I like watercolor? I don't know. I just want to be creative and paint. You know what? Do it. Like, it's $1.25. Really, you're not going to break the bank with this. If you want to just, maybe you saw a cool reel where I was doing some practice strokes and you just wanted to try it out, just why not, right? They're not good. You're not going to get a good result. Actually, it doesn't look too bad here, but they're not great. But if you just want to practice with them just to see if you like watercolor, definitely I suggest you get them. The only thing is that a lot of the techniques that I show in my videos, you're not going to be able to do with really cheap supplies. Okay. So like, I'll show you just for an example, wet on wet with this paint. It doesn't move. It doesn't go anywhere. It's because it's cheap. It does not move. You can't do wet on wet with this cheap paint. And you'll see that in the other video too. But if you want to do it for practice strokes or just like maybe painting flowers, sure, go for it. But you're not going to get the same effects as you would with better paints. However, what I do suggest, so you don't need professional paints or paper to work on. Like I said, this Canson one is fairly affordable. There are other affordable papers. A really good palette that I like that is very affordable. I think it's like $34 or something, or maybe even the one that's a little bit smaller. This Milang palette. I don't know how to say it. This is really good. This is not professional quality, but this is really nice paint. I actually really enjoy this palette, and it's not expensive. Like, it's really nice paint. So I would suggest getting something like this. I actually did a comparison with this and then two other palettes off Amazon. I think it was Magic Fly and something else, Artistro. Didn't like those two. This one was the best. I definitely suggest this one, or which one? I think this one might be a bit more expensive. So actually, a viewer sent me this one to try out, which was so nice. This Muñoz palette is actually pretty nice too. But that Milong palette is really nice. I definitely suggest that. And they have a smaller version of it too. So you don't have to spend a ton of money on tubes or anything like that, but you can definitely, like if you can afford $30 for a paint that will last for a long time, I highly suggest it. And then for brushes, those Prince and Snap brushes, I feel like this was maybe $10, maybe. I think in the US it's way cheaper. But when you're looking for a brush, I like to personally look for a brush that has a nice snap to it. So see how like I push I push the bristles and they snap back into place. They're not too soft. They're kind of springy, and it has a nice point. Okay, it has a really nice point. And it's a round brush. That is what I look for in my brushes. Okay, so if you find that, that's not even this brand, go for it. And then paper, we already talked about paper. Let me see. Will you be getting more of your paintbrushes that you came out with a little over a year ago? Yes, they are sold out for like the third time. I think they might be restocking, but we're coming out with all the brushes that are available in my subscription boxes. There we have an overstock that were not sold in the boxes because we had to order more than we actually sold. So we're going to be selling those individually, and there's like brushes that are going to come in at like dagger brushes, cat's tongue brushes. There's like filbert brushes. We have like 24 different kinds of brushes. They're great. So those will be available hopefully soon. I think they're going to be doing some product photos for them soon. So fingers crossed soon. Are you going to create your own color on the subscription palette? Like an Emma Forest or an Emma Blush? That's cute. So far, no, they're just already named. But that would be cute. Scrubber brushes. Do you use scrubber brushes for bokeh? Nope. If you check out episode 7 of my watercolor week videos, I just used a regular brush and then I blotted it with tissue. Do we get a tracking number for our boxes? I don't know. You can always email Craftimo at support@craftimo.com. And then you can ask them because I'm not sure. They're the ones that are shipping everything. And yeah. Okay. Okay. What size is your dagger brush? I actually have a bunch of dagger brushes. This one's a size 10. I think I have a size 8 and a size 6 and a size 2 coming out. They're all great. I really like the little ones. I think this is the biggest one, I think. But yeah, I really like the little ones. Is that a dagger? No. Oh, this was one of the tester ones. This is a bigger one. But I really like the little daggers. They're my favorite. Do I have it there? I have a little cat's tongue here, which is super cute and fun. I like the small ones. And look at this little filbert brush. This is fun to play with as well. Okay, enough about that. How do you get your brushes back in shape? That is a great question. Okay, so I think during one of the tutorials, I kind of talked about like going like this with your brush and, creating like texture and stuff like that. Now, if you were to leave your brush like this and let it dry, that's not good. Don't do that. Anytime you are finished painting with your brushes, because you can do this to your brush. That is no problem. I do this to get texture. You know what I mean? It's fun. Whenever you are done painting with your brushes, all you have to do is rinse them in water. You can go get clean water, rinse them thoroughly. You don't have to wash them. Run it against the side. And then I'll just take my paper towel and I'll roll them like this back into shape. You can even just like make the tip exactly back to the way it was and lay it flat. Okay, make sure it's not like resting up against your water jar like that, because then your tip's going to dry like that and it will be ruined. Lay it flat with, make sure that tip is not touching anything, or even better yet, so there's like a couple of contraptions that you can to have them hanging upside down, which is actually best because if there's any water that's in the ferrule, it will drain out that way, because water trapped in the ferrule can loosen the glue that holds the handle to the ferrule and the ferrule to the bristles. So it's always great to have it drain out. I actually don't do that. I just lay it flat. But I saw someone take either like silly putty or their kneaded eraser and go like this, and then have it on the side of their desk like that, just suspended, like this. Okay, so that's a great idea. I saw that. I was like, that's so smart. But yeah, you just have to lay it flat, shape your bristles back to the way they were. I don't know how much the brushes are going to cost. Where did you get your logo from on the wall? That was done by a Canadian woodworking artist, Lemon Lush Co. She's in Ontario, which was great. I love it. Makes me feel legit. Someone sent me that yesterday. A friend sent me a hack using a menstrual, like a pad, a period pad, instead of paper towel. I haven't tried it, but someone sent me a picture of that yesterday, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know. I'm going to stick with paper towel. Also, pads are expensive, so no. But yeah, that was interesting too. Hi Emma, can you talk about your subscription with Craftimo and how it works? So I'm not going to get into it too much because they are sold out right now. You can't purchase them anyway. But essentially we had subscription boxes. You can actually look on my channel. I do have a video about them. The subscription boxes, answering all the questions, so you can take a look over there. But right now they are currently sold out. We're thinking about opening it back up in May, but as of right now they are sold out. Have you ever tried Dr. P.H. Martin's paint? So I have the bleed proof white, which you guys have seen me use a billion times. Love this stuff for white ink. I had the Hydrus watercolors, which is liquid watercolors, and they're just very vibrant. And the one thing I didn't like about them is that you couldn't like put them in a palette and then reuse them. They get all flaky once they dried. So I didn't like that. And the initial appeal for watercolor, besides it being beautiful and I like the wet on wet, one of the things I loved about it was that, because I was like a new mom, I could paint during his nap time. And if he woke up, I could leave everything as it was and walk away. It wasn't like when I used to paint with acrylic paints where I had to clean up my mess because all my paints were going to dry. You know what I mean? If I didn't use them right then, they would dry out. So like it was just so much more of a cleanup. This, I could literally close it, walk away. So love this. But I couldn't do that with the Hydrus ones because they didn't dry well. It was weird. Oh, someone said they're timid, or they feel like this lack of confidence with making lines and stuff. And this is also something I've seen when I've worked with new painters. I see a lot of this. So someone has a brush and they just put it in the water a little bit, and then they'll go into the color like this. And then they'll go like this. And then they go like this. I need you to stop being scared of your supplies. Don't be scared. You're not going to ruin them. Get your brush wet, like nice and wet. Put a ton of water in there. Swish it around. You're not going to ruin your brush. You're not going to ruin your paints. Get in there. Get in there. Mix it up. This is why I feel like maybe a lot of beginners are not getting that saturated dark value, because they're not activating their colors. Like, look at that dark, rich color. And then when you lay it on your paper, unless you're doing like a little detail, see what your brush can do. Lay it down. Don't be scared to really use pressure and push down. Obviously, don't push down to the ferrule where it scrapes along, but push down to the belly of the brush. See how big you can make your lines. You're not going to ruin your brush. Like I said, after when you're done, as long as you rinse them and you shape them back, they're going to be fine. But when you're making your lines, like that first exercise I had you guys do, where you, hi. Yeah. Can I say hi to him for a second? Is he going down for his nap?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's miserable.
Are you miserable?
Yeah, he's miserable.
Baby! You don't look miserable. Daddy lying?
He was whining.
Is Daddy lying? Look at those chunky legs. Who's that? Say hi. This is Miles. Oh my God, you're so cute. He's going down for his nap. Can you wave hi? Say hi.
Oh, you waved the backhand.
Oh, good job. We've
Wave
been
hi.
working on it with Miss Rachel. Say hi. Wave. Go hi.
Say hi.
Can you clap? Go yay.
My mind does it.
Clap. Yay. Good job. Oh my God, I love you. Okay, you go for your nap. Please go down nicely. No screaming. I love you. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay.
Um,
Cute little baby break.
time out for 2 seconds. No, it's not going.
Why?
Because he refuses to be chopped off. I got it. I love you. Enjoy your
I am
stream.
working right now.
I love you. Enjoy your stream.
I am live. Matthew. Okay. Children are so fun. My older ones. Having a meltdown. Okay. Okay. Would you ever do a tutorial on extra large abstract florals? Maybe 20 by 20? Yeah, maybe. Large pieces scare me, but maybe. I could try. You sure make beautiful babies. Thank you. I love him. He's so freaking cute. He's such a good baby. He's like the best baby. But yeah, so when you're doing your lines, like, I mean, that doesn't look good. Like, what is that? But I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to really go for it. Mix those colors, you know, like use your supplies. Do not be timid. Don't do that. You're not going to ruin them. There's nothing to be scared of. That's why I like books like these where they have lots of pages and, you know, maybe it's not too expensive where you feel scared to use it. Just really get to know your supplies that way. So there's that. Someone said when they did the salt that they used, I think, like coarse salt, and it's changed the way it looked. Try different types of salt. It could give you different effects, so I'm not sure about that. How to make things more transparent for layering. So again, the more transparent a color is, the more water it has to it, and the more saturated, darker value it is, the more paint. So if you want to do like a transparent layer, say I have this really, I think we already did this, but say I have this really saturated part here. I have no paint on my brush. My brush is damp. I'm just going to wet it up just a little bit. I don't want a ton of water. I just want a little bit. So I'm just running against the side again, tabbing it there. Just take a little bit, maybe move it to another section, and then do another layer to make it more transparent. You're just taking a little bit of it. Okay, so if you have this like big saturated section, wash off your brush and just take a little bit of it, move it over to a different area, and then you have a really light value. Okay, so just practice doing that. I do have a video, I think, that's like called like working with light values or something like that. What green do you use for leaves? So I love my olive green color, and I love perylene green. So olive green is like one of my favorites, and then perylene green is a nice dark color. I used to use sap green all the time, which is a great color, but I find that it could look a little bit, it's pretty good for leaves, but if it's a little too vibrant for you, mix a little bit of its contrasting color, a little bit of red into your green, and then it just dulls it down just a bit so it looks a bit more natural. That's a good mix. Taping down paper. So someone asked, why do we tape down paper? So I use painter's tape a lot. This is from the dollar store. And I use it mostly when I'm doing a landscape. So the reason why we tape down our paper is to keep it flat. So, because if you've painted with watercolor, you know that the more water you have on your paper, the more your page will buckle. So see how this is kind of wavy? This isn't even that bad. This is pretty good. But if you, I also didn't use a ton of water. If I was covering this whole area with paint and water, the buckling and the warping of the paper would be pretty intense. So especially during the painting. So this just keeps it flat while you're painting it. And then when you take the tape off, you have a nice little border around it. It will still be warped, but you can always flatten it by making sure your paper is completely dry. You spray the back of your paper with like a little spray bottle. Spray the back of your paper with water, and then put it under like a ton of heavy books on a flat surface, and it will flatten it overnight. So, but that's why we use tape, to keep it from buckling and warping during your painting. I do have to go soon. What was I gonna say? I think that was most of the questions that I got. Let me just look at the comments here just to make sure there's nothing I'm missing too much. Do you recommend using both sides of the watercolor paper for practice? Yeah, I do. If it's for practice, completely. I try not to waste my paper, even though it's not wasting it. But you know what I mean? Try to make the most out of my paper. It depends on the paper though too. Like, well, no, you can use both of it. If it's for practice, yes. Some colors are better at being transparent too, for sure. Yes, so if you look at that, and someone also asked, how do you know if a paint is transparent or opaque? So if you have like a dot card like this, it will actually, here. So if you look up close, I don't know if you can see. So there's like, see these little squares? That actually means, it tells you if a paint is opaque, semi-opaque, semi-transparent, transparent, or G if it's a granulating paint, or ST if it's staining. So yeah, Winsor Violet is a staining color. So that kind of means like it's harder to lift. Okay, it's a, wait, is that the one? Or was it, I think so. Yeah, Winsor Violet. Yeah, this one. So it's a staining color. So that means that it won't really lift all that well. See? But then you'll have other colors that lift pretty well. So if you ever want to know, a lot of these paint companies will have a website and it will tell you if colors are opaque or semi-transparent or whatever. I noticed that a lot of the cadmium colors are very opaque. Yes, you can paint on both sides of the paper. Do you get overwhelmed with palettes that come with tones of color? Honestly, I don't know. Like I like buying tubes because I like to make my palette my own. I like to pick and choose my colors. That's why I try not to, I don't really use a lot of pre-made like pan palettes, but I don't really get overwhelmed. Okay, I'm using Canson watercolor paper. So that's the one I have here. When I'm painting many times, the grain in the paper is visible. What am I doing wrong? I don't think you're doing anything wrong. It's probably just the paper. Sometimes, like, is it Canson XL? Like, this is a Canson XL, but there's also other Canson ones, like Canson Heritage, Canson something else. I forget what it's called. But yeah, different watercolor papers are going to have a different texture to it, and some of them you can actually see through. Like, you can see the grain through it, and some of them you can't. What do you think about white night paints? I've never used them. I try not to buy a ton of watercolors just because I already have so many that companies have asked me to test out, and I do end up giving a lot away. So I try not to have a lot because I don't like them just sitting in my drawers. They said if you don't like the grain to show, use hot press paper. It's smooth. Hot press paper is smooth, but beware, hot press paper does not perform the same way that cold press does. It is very smooth, but it's a lot harder to get color bleeds and some of the effects that you get with cold press. Cold press is my absolute favorite. Where did you get the whiteboard behind you on the wall? I'm guessing this one that has like this one, that one, IKEA. That's from IKEA. And yeah. Okay. And I think I covered a lot of things. If you guys have any more questions, I will be checking comments for the next couple days. Like I said, I do get an overwhelming amount of comments on YouTube, so it's impossible for me to see all of them and respond. If you do have any specific questions, you can find my page on Facebook or Instagram. I always answer messages on Instagram. But yeah, that's about it, I think. I hope I covered what you guys were hoping to hear. Again, join our Facebook group because we have people, like, you can share your work on there. Some people can help you out if you're struggling. And I can pop on there too and give you some tips and tricks and all that fun stuff. So the link is in the description for the Facebook group. And yeah, I think that's about it. Okay, I gotta go deal with my older child because he's causing some issues. No, okay, he's bored. We need to just go deal with that. But thank you guys for joining me today. And I do want to make an announcement that things are changing on my Patreon. Number of videos, exclusive videos on Patreon are increasing. Prices are the same. So I'm just going to leave that there starting February 1st. So you can sign up February 1st if you are interested. But I usually do one Patreon exclusive tutorial a month over on Patreon. But I am going to be doing one a week starting in February. So if you're interested, also look in the description because my Patreon is there. And there's a ton of tutorials that are not just on YouTube. They're just on Patreon. So that's that. Okay. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.